The restaurant was candlelit and hushed, the kind of place where senators whispered to cardinals and nobody ever raised their voice above the clink of crystal. La Perla sat on the top floor of the tallest building in Manhattan, reserved entirely tonight for Valentino Moretti and the woman on his arm. Isabella Rossi. She moved like money and danger in one breath, black silk dress hugging every curve, hair pinned up with a single diamond clip that had cost more than most people's houses. At her wrist glinted something new, a slim platinum bracelet set with a row of tiny sapphires. It caught the low light every time she lifted her champagne. Valentino noticed the second they sat down. He always noticed. He was 36, built like a statue someone had taught to kill, dressed in midnight Tom Ford. The scar that ran through his left eyebrow gave his face a permanent half-smirk, but tonight the smirk was gone. His dark eyes fixed on that bracelet the way a wolf fixes on a limp. Isabella laughed at something the waiter said, light, careless, the sound she only made when she felt safe. She reached for the bread basket. The bracelet slid down her wrist, revealing a tiny engraved initials on the inside, N. R. Not V. M. Not his. The air at their table changed temperature. The two capos sitting 3 tables away pretending to read menus suddenly found their steaks fascinating. The string quartet in the corner played a fraction softer, as if the instruments themselves sensed the shift. Valentino set his fork down without a sound. Tesoro, he said, voice velvet over steel. What is that on your wrist? Isabella glanced down like she'd forgotten it was there. Her smile didn't waver. Oh, a gift. Pretty, isn't it? From who? She lifted one shoulder, the silk sliding against her skin. Does it matter? The candle between them flickered. Valentino leaned forward, elbows on the white linen, fingers steepled. The smile he gave her wasn't a smile at all. Take it off. Now. He said it quietly, the way men speak right before gunfire. Or I choose which finger it stays on. Isabella's pulse jumped, but she'd been his for 3 years, she knew the rules. She also knew when he was past discussion. Still, something reckless sparked in her eyes. It's only jewelry, Valentino. Jewelry, he repeated, tasting the word like poison. From a man whose name starts with N, who thinks he can put his mark on what's mine. Across the room, a wine glass cracked in someone's hand. Isabella turned the bracelet slowly, letting the sapphires catch fire. You put a ring on my finger 6 months ago, she said, nodding toward the 7-carat black diamond on her left hand. This is my right wrist. Last I checked, you don't own both. The silence that followed was so complete the quartet stopped mid-note. Valentino didn't blink. Everything about you is mine, Isabella. Every inch, every breath, every heartbeat. His gaze dropped to the bracelet again. Especially the parts you let other men touch. She felt the heat rise in her cheeks, anger, fear, and something darker. You're embarrassing me. No, Bella, you're embarrassing yourself. He reached into his inside jacket pocket. The movement was slow, deliberate. When his hand came back into the candlelight, he held a small velvet pouch. He set it on the table between them like a gauntlet. Last chance, he said. Take his off. Put mine on. Isabella stared at the pouch. She knew what was inside before he even loosened the drawstring, a cuff forged from blackened steel and white gold, custom made in Naples, engraved with his family crest on the inside where only she would ever see it. She'd watched him design it months ago, drunk on Barolo and arrogance, bragging that one day she'd wear it and never take it off. She hadn't agreed. He hadn't asked. Now the restaurant watched with held breath. Isabella lifted her chin. And if I say no? Valentino's eyes went blacker than the diamond on her finger. Then I walk over to table 14, break Nico Romano's hands in front of his wife and his mistress, and bring you the pieces to wear instead. Your choice. Her stomach flipped. Nico Romano. Of course he knew. Valentino always knew. She glanced, couldn't help it, toward the far corner. Nico sat with a blonde on one side and a redhead on the other, laughing too loudly, flashing the same cocky grin that had once talked her into a weekend in Capri before Valentino had ever looked twice at her. Nico raised his glass in a mock toast when he caught her eye. Valentino didn't turn around. He didn't need to. His hand slid across the table, closing over her wrist, gentle, almost tender, right above the bracelet. His thumb pressed against her pulse. 5 seconds, amore. The steel in his voice cut deeper than any shout. Isabella swallowed. She unclasped the sapphires with fingers that only shook a little. The bracelet fell onto the linen like a dead thing. She didn't look at it again. Valentino released her wrist only long enough to slide his own cuff from the pouch. It locked with a soft, final click, heavier than sin, cold against her skin. The crest pressed into her pulse point like a brand. He lifted her hand and kissed the inside of her wrist, right over his mark, lips lingering. Better, he murmured against her skin. Now eat your risotto before it gets cold. As if nothing had happened, he picked up his fork. The quartet started playing again. Conversation tiptoed back into the room. The capos exhaled. Isabella stared at the black cuff glinting against her olive skin. It was beautiful in the way a guillotine is beautiful, perfectly designed for its purpose. She looked up. Valentino was watching her, something savage and satisfied flickering behind his eyes. You didn't have to threaten to cut my finger off, she said quietly. He wiped the corner of his mouth with his napkin. I didn't threaten your finger, Bella. I threatened his. You just wear the consequences. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could see it. She hated that part of her, the part that always bent for him, was thrilled. Nico's an idiot, she said. It was nothing. Valentino leaned in until his lips brushed her ear. Then next time nothing gives you jewelry, you mail it back to him in a box with his own teeth. He sat back, signaled the waiter for another bottle of Sassicaia, and smiled like a king who'd just won a war no one else knew was being fought. Isabella picked up her champagne. The black cuff caught the light every time she moved. She thought about fighting him, really fighting, the kind that ended in scorched earth. Then she thought about what he would do to Nico, to her, to anyone who ever tried to take her from him again. She drank. Later, in the back of the Maybach, city lights streaking across the windows, Valentino pulled her into his lap. He turned her wrist over, tracing the crest with one fingertip. You're angry, he said. Not a question. I'm always angry with you, she answered. Doesn't seem to change anything. He laughed softly, the sound rumbling through his chest into hers. It changes everything. You just like pretending it doesn't. She wanted to argue. Instead, she rested her head against his shoulder. Val, if another man ever gives me something again, I'll cut his hands off myself. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Good girl. Outside, Manhattan blurred past, oblivious. Inside the car, the Mafia king held his queen a little tighter, the weight of his cuff on her wrist, a promise and a prison both. And Isabella Rossi, for all her fire and all her fight, felt it settle around her heart like it had always belonged there.